For my grandmother's medical bills, I became a bodyguard and contract boyfriend to the heiress Victoria Vance. For the next 10 years, I was at her beck and call, a permanent fixture by her side. On the 10th anniversary of our arrangement, Valentine's Day, she sent me an address with a text. "I want you to propose to me. In public." I arrived in my best suit, a diamond ring in my pocket, believing we had finally crossed the chasm between us, that this was real. But she walked right past me and threw herself into the arms of the man her family was arranging for her to marry. He roared with laughter. "Tori, you win this one," he said, his voice booming. "The dog you bought is perfectly trained, does whatever his master says." The crowd around them erupted in laughter, their eyes mocking me. A charity case thinking he could land a Vance. A frog trying to kiss a princess. Victoria, pleased with my performance, waved a dismissive hand. "I'll add another $1 million to your grandmother's medical fund," she announced, as if granting a favor. She didn't know. My grandmother was already gone, and our contract was over. But after I vanished from her world, Victoria Vance went insane looking for me. "Jake, $1 million just for showing up. You've got it easy, man." One of the guests sneered, nudging his friend. "Hey, how about you kneel and shine our shoes? If Miss Vance is in a good mood, maybe she'll call you for the next easy gig." The others chuckled along. I stood there, trapped in a spotlight of humiliation, my eyes instinctively searching for Victoria. Did she see this as nothing more than a transaction between a buyer and her hired help? 10 years ago, my grandmother got sick. Everything our family had wasn't even a drop in the bucket for the mountain of medical debt. I'd lost my parents when I was young. She was the only family I had. That's when I signed the agreement with the Vance family. I would be Victoria's bodyguard and boyfriend, and they would cover my grandmother's care. Over the years, at their direction, I learned martial arts to protect her. I learned to critique fine wines, speak multiple languages, and navigate the labyrinthine etiquette of high society. We learned so much together, all to ensure I could provide her with the perfect companionship experience. I needed the money. She needed a companion. It was a fair trade. For the price of a pair of earrings, she bought a decade of my undiluted attention. With a decade of my life, I bought my grandmother 10 years of comfort and care. The only problem was, I fell for her. I was the hired help, the man she'd bought and paid for. Yet I was blinded by her moments of warmth, foolishly hoping she might actually love me. It didn't matter. It was my mistake. Now I just needed to see things clearly. I downed a glass of whiskey, then gave Victoria a small nod, a farewell. But her fiancé, Caleb Sterling, blocked my path. "What, $1 million isn't enough to shine a shoe? You don't know how good you have it." The crowd chimed in. "I'll do it. I'll do it for $500,000. 200 grand. Right here." These were the sons and daughters of dynasties just like Victoria. They didn't need the money. They were just echoing Caleb, piling on the humiliation for sport. Victoria gave me a cool, appraising look. "If the price isn't right, I can add more." Her words cut deeper than anything the others had said. It used to be her who protected my dignity. Once, at a gala, a guest pointed at me and whispered to his companion, "The one Miss Vance brought." The words weren't loud, not profane, but the contempt was clear. I was angry, but I had no ground to stand on. Victoria had marched right over to the man and said, "That's my boyfriend. I suggest you show some respect." She'd forced an apology out of him. Afterward, she'd comforted me, telling me I wasn't like them, that the work I did for her company, if calculated by commission, was worth more than what she paid me. We were partners, she'd said. I wasn't a freeloader. I wasn't beneath anyone. But now, she stood with Caleb as he tore me down. My dignity was ground into dust, and her preference for him was blindingly obvious. Caleb shot me a triumphant smirk, then leaned back in his chair, tapping his polished Italian leather shoe. An invitation. A cold laugh escaped me. I threw the black card she'd given me onto the table in front of him. "You said I'm lucky. Here. All this luck is yours, if you want it." With that, I turned and walked away. Victoria chased after me, pulling me into her car. She sighed. "You were impulsive today. The Sterling family is just as powerful as the Vances. You publicly humiliated him. How is he supposed to save face?" So she knew it was a public humiliation. Something Caleb couldn't bear, but I was expected to? In her world, Caleb was her equal. I was just something she'd purchased. He had a reputation to protect. I didn't. When I said nothing, she produced a delicate, jewel-encrusted brooch. "I know today isn't just our 10-year anniversary. It's also your birthday. She held it out. This is for you. Do you like it? Her tone softened, became placating. Let's just forget what happened. I'll smooth things over. But you can't be so reckless next time. It was our so-called 10-year anniversary. Yes, but 10-year contract signing felt more accurate. I was about to speak when her phone buzzed. It was her best friend. Her voice frantic. Tori, you have to come back. Caleb's furious. He's drinking, and we can't stop him. Panic flashed across Victoria's face. His health is fragile, he can't drink that much. I'm on my way. She scrambled to get out, pausing only at the door. She turned back and tossed another card onto the passenger seat. Go home by yourself. There's $2 million on here. Pay the hospital for Grandma. Get her some supplements. I'll come with you to see her as soon as I'm done. Then she was gone, the car door slamming shut behind her. I left the brooch and the bank card on the seat. She didn't know. My grandmother was already dead. There were no more medical bills to pay. Our contract was terminated. I had come to her for money. It was true. But somewhere along the way, I had fallen in love with her, hoping we could become something real. She had been so considerate, so kind. I was sure she felt something genuine for me, too. I was wrong. It was a transaction from beginning to end. Now that my grandmother was gone, it was time for me to go, too. These material things meant nothing to me. She could save them for her next pet project. Back at the penthouse she provided, I started to pack. I opened the walk-in closet and was hit with a wall of designer clothes and gifts, all from Victoria. As a patron, she was certainly generous. Besides birthdays, any time she felt I'd been wronged, she'd shower me with expensive presents. But that wasn't what I wanted. For 10 years, aside from my grandmother's medical expenses, I hadn't touched a dime of the money she gave me. First, it was a matter of pride. I had accepted the contract, but I couldn't accept the idea of being kept. Second, I never wanted our relationship to be purely about money. I worked freelance jobs on the side, coding, consulting, and though it was hard and paid little, it was mine. It was how I maintained a sense of equality between us. Now the contract was over, and I wouldn't be taking any of it with me, but that left a problem. I needed money for a plane ticket out of here. I called Leo Davis, a friend from college. Leo, hey, you mentioned you know someone who buys secondhand jewelry. Could you help me sell a diamond ring? It's brand new. Just bought it. Of course, man, Leo said instantly. There's a good spot downtown that does consignments. Meet me there tomorrow. I'll help you get a fair price. After thanking him profusely, I hung up. I pulled out the ring box, staring at the diamond. A dull ache of pointless melancholy settled in my chest. I put it away. I used to have savings, but when Victoria told me to propose, I actually believed her. I cashed out everything I had to buy this ring. It might have cost less than one of her handbags, but it was everything I had, paid for with money I'd earned myself. It was the most sincere gesture I could make. Now the money was gone. The ring was custom-made, non-refundable. My only way to afford a flight was to sell it. That evening, Victoria returned to the penthouse with Caleb in tow. They moved with a casual intimacy that made me want to disappear. I turned to retreat to my room. Tori, Caleb's voice stopped me. Where am I sleeping tonight? I froze. Victoria's tone was a mix of exasperation and indulgence. I know how particular you are. You can have my bedroom. Okay? Caleb shook his head. You've had a long day. I wouldn't dream of making you move. He pointed at me. Can I have his room? Of course. Victoria agreed without a second thought. He can sleep anywhere. The important thing is that you're comfortable. With her permission, the house staff immediately began clearing my belongings out of the guest suite and moving them to a storage closet, replacing them with Caleb's things. Caleb then feigned a moment of recollection. Oh, my bad, he said, looking at me. Jake, I forgot to ask if that was okay with you. This was her home, not mine. My permission was irrelevant. I just nodded. It's fine. Caleb inspected the room, then turned back with a smile. I had a bit too much to drink today. I'm craving some walnuts. Jake, could you come peel some for me? My immediate instinct was to refuse, but I didn't even have a plane ticket yet. A direct confrontation would only make things worse. I looked to Victoria. She hesitated for a moment. Well, if you hadn't thrown a tantrum this afternoon, he wouldn't have had so much to drink. Go on. Peel the walnuts for him. Consider it an apology. My heart sank. I had no choice but to agree. I walked to the table in my former room. There was a bag of half-cracked walnuts, but no nutcracker. I scanned the room, about to go find one, when Caleb blocked my path. "No tools," he said softly. "You can use your hands." I started to leave, but Caleb's voice, low and menacing, stopped me. "Tori agreed to this, you know. This is her way of letting me blow off some steam at your expense." My feet felt cemented to the floor. The air turned to ice. Seeing me hesitate, Caleb grew bolder. "What's the point in leaving? You think she's going to fight with me over a hired hand? Besides, Tori and I have known each other since we were kids. Who do you think she trusts more? Even if you told her, she'd just assume I was joking around and you were making a big deal out of nothing." He clapped me on the shoulder. "So, are you still going to leave?" My mind went numb, like a zombie. I walked back to the table, knelt, and began cracking the walnuts with my bare hands. My fingers split, blood dripped onto the polished wood, but I felt nothing. After what felt like an eternity, Caleb tapped the table. "All right, that's enough. You can go now." I nodded, moving woodenly toward the door. This was a warning. Caleb's voice followed me. "You'd better remember it. Don't think that just because you've been around for a while you have a shot at moving up. Tori and I are from the same world. You're just an ant, here for our amusement, easily crushed. What right do you have to stand beside her?" I nodded again. "I'll be out of her life as soon as I can." In the hallway, Victoria stopped me. "Caleb's only staying for a few days. Don't overthink it." "I know." She wrapped her arms around my neck, her voice a soft murmur. "Don't be so gloomy. I'm not going to marry him." She pulled back slightly. "But I can't stop it alone. He has to agree to call it off, too. If I want him to do me a favor that big, I have to be a good hostess, right?" Just then, Caleb called from the room. "Tori, my head is killing me." She dropped me instantly and rushed back to his side. Watching her disappear, I let out a bitter laugh and unclenched my fists. Blood dripped from my fingertips onto the marble floor. I found an empty room and cleaned my wounds. The sting of the antiseptic was sharp, a jolt of pain that finally silenced the chaos in my heart. The next day, I hurried to the address Leo had given me. It was a modest jeweler. Across the street was another, far more opulent, that only dealt in custom pieces and didn't buy secondhand. Unusually, the place was swarming with people in identical black suits. "What's going on over there?" I asked Leo. He shrugged. A man next to us chimed in. "You haven't heard? Some heiress is buying a ring for her boyfriend who just came back to the country. Booked out the whole store and brought her own security." Others joined the conversation. "Seriously? To book out a place like that? The tip alone must be insane. She must really love him. Man, her boyfriend is one lucky guy. Rich, beautiful, and crazy about him." I listened with half an ear, my mind calculating how much I'd lose on the ring, and how much I'd have left after buying a ticket. Suddenly, the man beside me gasped. "Look, there they are. The heiress and her boyfriend. They look so good together." I glanced in the direction he was pointing and my blood ran cold. It was Victoria. I snapped my head away, praying she wouldn't see me, but in my peripheral vision, I saw it all. Caleb accepting a huge bouquet of roses from her. "Tori," he said, his voice carrying across the street. "You're too good to me." Then, he leaned in and kissed her. So, the heiress who had booked out a store for her boyfriend was Victoria. After the kiss, she playfully tapped his chest, a wide smile spreading across her face. Then she announced she was giving every employee in the store a $10,000 tip. Cheers erupted from inside, and the onlookers on the sidewalk gasped. The boyfriend she had in mind was always Caleb, wasn't it? I had been thinking I needed to formally break up with her before I left, but now I saw how pathetic that was. He was the one in her heart. I was just a business deal. We had never even held hands. What was there to break up? As I was lost in my thoughts, a strange silence fell over the street. I looked up. Everyone was staring at me. Victoria's face was a mask of cold fury. Caleb strode across the street, plucked the baseball cap from my head, and pulled me a few steps toward her. "It really is you, Jake." Victoria's expression darkened. "Didn't I give you money? What are you doing here?" Caleb smiled. "I think this place buys second-hand jewelry. Jake, the things Tori gave you were from the heart. To turn around and sell them. That's just heartbreaking, isn't it?" Her face was like stone. "Where's the manager of this store?" she demanded. "Tell him if he ever accepts anything from Jake Evans again, he'll have the entire Vance Corporation to answer to." The manager hurried out, half coaxing, half shoving me away from the storefront. He shot a venomous glare at Leo. I looked at Leo, filled with guilt. Before I could apologize, He clapped me on the back. Don't blame yourself. It's not your fault some people are crazy. He pulled a thick wad of cash from his wallet and pressed it into my hand. 2,000. For emergencies. My eyes burned. Leo gave me a gentle push. Go on. And don't you dare try to give it back. After Victoria's outburst, selling the ring in this city would be nearly impossible. If I delayed any longer, even leaving might become complicated. I had to get out now, which meant I couldn't refuse Leo's kindness. I thought for a moment, then took out the ring that had cost me all my savings. Leo, hold on to this for me. I might be off the grid for a while. Once I'm settled, I'll pay you back. Back at the penthouse, I bought the earliest flight I could find and grabbed my suitcase. But as I reached the ground floor, a group of men blocked my path. Leading them was Victoria's older brother, Julian Vance. A chill went down my spine. This was bad. Julian wasted no time. At the party yesterday, you threw a card at Caleb Sterling's face. Is that correct? My stomach tightened. I nodded. Yes. And today, when my sister was buying Caleb a ring, you were also there? I could only nod again, not daring to explain I was there to sell my own ring. Julian was known for being cold and ruthless. He didn't listen to excuses. I remembered when I first started the contract. I'd spent too long with Victoria one day, and she missed her finance class. Julian showed up, didn't say a word to his sister, but simply gestured at me. One of his bodyguards took off his belt and beat me until my back was raw. He only called them off when Victoria was sobbing, promising she'd never neglect her duties again. Julian hadn't even blinked. Now, his sharp gaze was fixed on me. I thought you knew your place. I see you've gotten delusional, thinking you could actually move up. Did you think crashing Tori's ring shopping would give you an opening? That if they didn't buy a ring today, you'd have a chance? I was stunned. Victoria thought I was selling her gifts for cash, and her brother thought I was a stalker trying to sabotage her. The Vance siblings certainly had a high opinion of me. Before I could form a response, Julian's bodyguards rushed me, and a storm of fists and feet rained down. I crumpled to the floor. Julian loomed over me. Remember this lesson. If I see you again, it won't be this easy. Wiping a smear of blood from my lip, I struggled to speak. I never wanted to move up. I'm leaving her. That's my suitcase. You can check my flight confirmation. Julian nodded. A bodyguard took my phone and showed him the screen. After a moment, Julian had them pull me to my feet. Leaving so quickly? This isn't some ploy to get her to chase you, is it? I shook my head. Once I'm gone, it won't be hard for you to make sure she never finds me. He seemed satisfied. You're a smart man. I won't waste any more of your time. Wouldn't want you to miss your flight. But at the door, the estate manager and several staff members stopped me. Wait, you can't just leave like that. What if you took something? How would we explain that to Miss Vance when she returns? I tried to walk around them, too exhausted to argue. The manager's eyes swept over my bruised face. You still think you're the young Mrs. Darling, don't you? You're nothing now. At his signal, the other staff members closed in, insisting on searching my suitcase. I was shoved to the ground. They dumped the contents of my bag out. All that spilled onto the marble floor was a handful of cheap, worn-out clothes. Julian emerged from the lobby just in time to see the scene. He looked surprised. This is all you're taking? In his world, someone like me should have been stuffing every last gift into a suitcase. I ignored him, gathering my clothes from the floor. These are my own. His surprise flickered for a second. He stopped the manager, who was about to pat me down. Let him go. Don't stop him. At the airport, waiting for my flight, a rare sense of peace settled over me. Back on Fifth Avenue, Victoria couldn't focus on choosing a ring. After zoning out for the third time, she gave Caleb an apologetic smile, left him a blank check to pick whatever he wanted, and left. She sat in her car for a long time, then dialed the estate manager. Get things ready. I'm taking Jake to the hospital tonight to see his grandmother. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Miss Vance. Jake's grandmother has passed away. Victoria froze. What about Jake? She demanded. Where is he now? The manager replied. Miss. We already sent him away. What? He's my boyfriend. Who gave you permission to send him away? The manager, realizing his mistake, quickly tried to backtrack. It was Mr. Vance, your brother. He told him to leave. The line went dead. Victoria immediately called Julian. Julian, what right do you have to interfere in my life? We had a deal. You said if I started my own successful company after I turned 18, Jake was mine. You said you'd stay out of it. Julian's voice was calm on the other end. Let's be clear, Tori. I didn't kick him out. I just went to persuade him to know his place. If you can get him back, I promise I won't interfere in your relationship again. You'd better mean that, she snapped, then hung up. She immediately called the manager back. Get to the airport right now and bring Jake back to me. If I don't see him when I get home, you're fired. Victoria slammed the phone down and was about to speed home when Caleb ran out, breathless. If you're heading back, let me come with you. She was anxious, but Caleb hadn't done anything wrong. She bit back her frustration and let him get in the car. As she weaved through traffic, ignoring the speed cameras, Caleb asked her why she was so agitated. After she explained, a flicker of something passed through his eyes. Relax, he said soothingly. He's just broke. This is his way of scaring you, playing the victim. You're not going to fall for a cheap trick like that, are you? But Victoria's frown didn't ease. In the past, if anyone had suggested Jake was only with her for the money, she would have flown into a rage, sometimes even taking it out on Jake himself. But now, she found herself praying that Caleb was right, that this was all just a ploy to scare her. At the airport, the manager arrived just as I was about to board the plane. He grabbed my suitcase, his voice pleading, Mr. Evans, Miss Vance has asked for you to come back. Please, just come back with us. I shook my head. All Victoria wanted was a plaything, a companion. It could be anyone. Why hold on to me? I wanted a real relationship, built on mutual affection, not a financial transaction masquerading as one. Our needs didn't align. There was no point in forcing it. I wrenched my suitcase from his grasp and boarded the plane without looking back. When Victoria got home, a wave of restless frustration washed over her. She called a maid. After Jake moved, which room was he in? Show me. The maid nervously led her to a second-floor storage closet. Victoria exploded. I told you to give him another room, not throw his things in a storage closet. Is this a place for a person to live? The maid hung her head, silent. After her outburst, Victoria retreated to her own bedroom. The moment she walked in, she froze. On her nightstand, a set of keys held down a single sheet of paper. Printed in stark black letters were 2 words. Contract terminated. Victoria walked toward it in disbelief, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. They had been so close for so long. She had almost forgotten the exact terms of the agreement they'd signed a decade ago. It stipulated that the contract would automatically expire the month after Jake's grandmother no longer required medical care. So, he was really leaving her. She scrambled down the stairs, determined to go to the airport herself and drag him back. They had spent 10 years together. Their bond, their history, couldn't be summed up by a piece of paper. How could he leave just because the contract was over? Stuck at a red light, she fumbled in the center console for a piece of gum to calm her nerves. The moment she opened the compartment, she froze as if struck by lightning. The light turned green. Horns blared behind her. She forced herself to drive, but her mind was reeling. Lying in the console were the jewel-encrusted brooch and the bank card she had given him on the day of the fake proposal. Had he been planning to leave since that day? How had she not noticed? She sped to the airport, her hands trembling on the wheel. Once parked, she opened the console again. It was true. The gifts she'd given him were right there. She slammed it shut, her face ashen. Maybe she had missed her chance. Forever. Soon, the estate manager found her, his face a mask of misery. I'm so sorry, Miss Vance. We truly tried, but Mr. Evans was adamant about leaving. There was nothing I could do. On the drive back, the manager drove while Victoria called Jake's number again and again. Each call went straight to voicemail, but she didn't stop trying. She spent the night in silence, turning the abandoned brooch over and over in her hands. She went to the closet in her room where some of Jake's clothes were kept. He hadn't taken a single one of the expensive designer items she'd bought him, which was one of the reasons she hadn't noticed he was preparing to leave. She knew his personality. The quieter he was about something, the more serious he was, leaving all the gifts behind, not saying a single word to her. He was truly hurt. She didn't sleep at all. The next day, Victoria packed a small bag, intending to fly abroad to find him. They had too many years of beautiful memories, too much shared history. She was certain she could find him and bring him back. Seeing her looking so lost, Caleb frowned, then quickly adopted a look of concern. Tori, I can't let you go alone. Let me come with you. I have friends over there who might be able to help you find him faster. Victoria nodded, accepting his offer. Months turned into a year. I had settled in another country, found a new job, and built a comfortable, predictable life. One day during lunch, a colleague approached me, holding out his phone. "Jake, you have to see this video. This girl is asking the internet for help finding her boyfriend." I glanced at the screen and my heart stopped. It was Victoria, but as I watched, stunned, the video showed Caleb wrapping an arm around her, pulling her head onto his shoulder to comfort her. Victoria, looking utterly exhausted, leaned into him without hesitation. I let out a bitter laugh. How bored could she be, dragging her new boyfriend halfway across the world just to track down a former employee for her own amusement? I pushed the phone back toward my colleague. "She already has a new boyfriend. I doubt she'll be looking for very long." My colleague stared at the intimate gesture in the video, his eyes wide with disbelief. And I was feeling sorry for her. What a mess. After several months abroad, despite enlisting the help of Caleb's friends, Victoria found no trace of Jake. Business at her company couldn't wait forever, so she had no choice but to return home. The first thing she did was deal with the backlog of work. Once that was done, she summoned the manager. "When did Jake's grandmother pass away? And why did none of you tell me?" The manager paled. "I did report it, miss, but you said you were preparing to welcome Mr. Sterling, and that you were not to be disturbed for any reason whatsoever." Victoria froze. She suddenly remembered a call from the manager on the day Caleb returned. He had said vaguely that Jake needed to speak with her. She had been so focused on Caleb's arrival that she'd snapped at the manager, reminding him of her orders. Drop everything? It can wait? Was the news about Jake's grandmother what he'd been trying to tell her? A wave of panic and anger washed over her. She pointed a trembling finger at him. "Why didn't you say it clearly? If you had just said it was about his grandmother, do you think I wouldn't have cared?" But even as she lashed out, a sliver of guilt pierced through her. She knew why he'd been vague. She had spent days preparing for Caleb's return and issued a strict command. To anyone watching, the message was clear. Caleb was the priority. Jake had been cast aside. Ultimately, the fault was hers. Jake had only signed that humiliating contract because his grandmother's illness was urgent, and he had no other options. For 10 years, he had been perfect, doing everything she or her family asked of him. A contract boyfriend was just a glorified bodyguard and companion. When she angered her family, it was Jake who bore the punishment. That's why most heiresses who had contract boyfriends usually ended the agreements after a few years. Only Jake had stayed with her for 10. All that hardship, all that careful navigation of her family's moods, was to keep her happy and to protect his grandmother's medical care. For Jake, his grandmother was more important than his own life. But when she died, not only was Victoria not by his side, she was meticulously planning a welcome party for another man. Worse, she had used something as sacred as a marriage proposal to mock him as part of a bet with her friends. How devastated he must have been. No wonder he'd left the brooch behind. The truth was, she wasn't completely oblivious. She knew that tricking him into a fake proposal, letting him be humiliated in public, would be deeply painful for him. But at the time, she didn't know about his grandmother. She had assumed that no matter how hurt he was, he would never leave because of the medical bills. She'd figured she could just soothe his feelings later. Victoria took a deep breath, another memory surfacing. The staff moving Jake's things to the storage closet. The people in this house were experts at reading the shifting winds of power. The moment she started preparing for Caleb's arrival, they had started speculating that Jake was on his way out. Her order to change his room was just confirmation. She wondered what other slights they had subjected him to. With that thought, she looked up. "Pull the security footage from those few days. I want to see it." A cold sweat broke out on the manager's forehead. "Miss, unfortunately, there was a problem with the cameras around that time. The footage is likely unavailable." Victoria gave a cold, humorless smile. "I haven't even told you which days I want. Yet you're already certain the cameras were broken?" Her voice dropped, taking on a dangerously sharp edge. "I want the footage from the day Caleb Sterling arrived until the day Jake Evans left. Don't make me ask again." In that moment, her expression was terrifyingly similar to her brother's. As the video played, Victoria saw things she had never known. She saw Jake emerge from the room that night, his hands dripping blood. He was clenching his sleeves tightly to stanch the flow. She hadn't noticed a thing. She had spoken a few brief words to him before Caleb had called her away. Jake had been left alone to find gauze and disinfect his own wounds. A sharp pain lanced through Victoria's heart. They had been together for so long, and she had always tried to protect him like a precious treasure. When he first came to her, she was still a student. If she didn't meet her family's academic standards, they would punish Jake. so she studied relentlessly to meet their demands. When her brother had Jake beaten for her skipping a finance class she hated, she had tearfully promised she would master the subject. To earn the right to move out of the family mansion with him, she had poured everything into building her own company. The day they moved into the penthouse, she had made a silent vow. She would never let anyone hurt Jake again. But now, she saw that she was the one who had inflicted the deepest wound. She had left him to grieve his grandmother's death alone, allowed others to laugh at his heartfelt proposal, and condoned Caleb taking out his anger on him. She knew Caleb would use the excuse of peeling walnuts to torment Jake, so why hadn't she said something, done something to protect him? Was she too trusting of Caleb? Or did she simply not care enough about Jake? When the footage showed Jake being beaten by her brother's men, and then cornered and humiliated by the manager and staff, her anger boiled over. She couldn't direct her fury at her brother. He was right. Though he had come to intimidate Jake, Jake had already packed his bags. He was leaving anyway. But the manager, Victoria's gaze fell on him. In the cool, air-conditioned room, the manager was drenched in sweat. He suddenly thought that the young miss, when angry, looked terrifyingly like the young master. "Pack your things," Victoria said, her voice flat and cold. "Be gone by midnight, and the others who were with you. I don't need to name them, do I?" The manager dropped to his knees. "Miss Vance, please. I've been with you since you were in the main house. Give me another chance. I was wrong. I have a family to support." Victoria was unmoved. For any other mistake, she might have given him a second chance, considering his years of service. But this involved Jake. There were no second chances. Seeing the unspoken grievance in his eyes, Victoria knew what he was thinking. He was just following her lead. She was the one who had snubbed Jake first. He was only acting based on her cues. And though he had been disgustingly opportunistic, she knew the root of the problem was her. She didn't want to admit it, but a heavy, suffocating feeling settled in her chest. After dismissing the manager, she had no energy for anything else. The emotional weight was exhausting, and she drifted off to sleep on the sofa. She slept until the middle of the night, when a chill woke her. Instinctively, she reached out, expecting to pull Jake closer for warmth, but her hand met only empty air. She opened her eyes, confused. "Jake?" she called out into the darkness. She called his name several times, but it wasn't Jake who appeared. It was Caleb. "Tori, what's wrong?" Seeing him, Victoria snapped back to reality. Of course, Jake was gone. A sour ache filled her chest, and she closed her eyes, fighting back tears. "It's nothing." Caleb, however, had reached his limit. "For God's sake, Tori, he was just a hired hand. One leaves, you buy another. Why are you being so dramatic about it?" The phrase hired hand struck a nerve. It was because everyone saw Jake as the help that the staff had dared to treat him that way. It was because of those words that he had left, heartbroken. She shot to her feet, pointing at the door. "Get out. Jake wasn't the help. He was my boyfriend. If you have any respect for me, you will respect him." Caleb had intended to use their childhood friendship to lower her guard, to gradually become a real couple. He never imagined that Jake actually held a place in her heart, that she would demand he respect his boyfriend. He laughed. A sharp, angry sound. "You want me to respect him now? Is what I just said any worse than when we tricked him into that fake proposal?" He shot back. "You were standing right there with me then, laughing along. Now that he's gone, you're suddenly his champion." Victoria froze. On that day, amid the roar of laughter, she had felt a fleeting moment of suffocation. A sudden urge to turn around and see the look on Jake's face. But Caleb had tightened his embrace, and the thrill of winning the bet had washed away the feeling. If she had just turned around, just for a second, would everything be different? A sharp pain twisted in her gut. Caleb started up the stairs to bed, but Victoria's voice stopped him. He paused, expecting an apology, some kind of peace offering. Instead, her voice was heavy and final. "You've been staying here for a long time, Caleb. It's time for you to go home." He spun around, incredulous. She was actually kicking him out. For a paid companion. "Victoria, do you hear yourself right now?" Her expression was blank. "You need to go back to your own home." Looking back, she realized all the friction between her and Jake had started the moment Caleb returned. She didn't want to investigate exactly what Caleb had done to contribute to Jake's pain. Whatever he did, it was her implicit permission and tolerance that had allowed him to hurt Jake in the first place. The ultimate culprit was her. But if she ever wanted Jake to come back, she had to send a clear message. And that meant Caleb could not stay here another night. Caleb's jaw tightened. Fine, Victoria. Don't regret this. He turned and stormed off to pack his things. The midnight silence was absolute. Caleb was gone. The manager and several other staff members were gone. The penthouse was eerily quiet. Victoria stood alone before the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the endless night. After a long time, she pulled out her phone, wanting to send Jake a message. She typed and deleted and typed. Finally, she managed for simple words. "Are you okay?" Her only reply was a red exclamation mark. With no leads on Jake's whereabouts, Victoria went back to the jewelry store and asked the manager if he knew anything. He told her that Jake had come with a man named Leo Davis and gave her Leo's contact information. The moment Victoria met Leo, she recognized him as the man who had been with Jake that day. She immediately pulled out a card. $1 million. I just want to get in touch with Jake. If you can arrange a meeting, there will be a substantial reward. Leo slowly pushed the card back across the table. You're Jake's ex-girlfriend? Ex-client. Victoria frowned. We were in a relationship. Leo shook his head. I know a little about your situation. So, unless Jake himself agrees, I can't give you his contact information. He held up a hand before she could explode. But, if you have a moment, I can tell you a few things about him. When Victoria left her meeting with Leo, she had a diamond ring in her pocket, the one Jake had intended to give her. Leo told her everything. He told her that aside from his grandmother's medical bills, Jake had never spent a penny of her money, working freelance jobs to cover his own expenses. He explained that Jake hadn't been selling her gifts that day. He had been trying to sell the ring he'd bought with his own life savings. Jake hadn't used her money because he wanted to be her equal, as much as possible. He hoped that one day, when their relationship deepened, she would believe he loved her for who she was, not for the lifestyle she provided. He had tried so hard to meet her in the middle, to prove his sincerity, to become a real partner. And just when he thought that dream was about to come true, she had dealt him that devastating blow. Tears streamed down her face. She finally understood. But it was too late. He was done waiting for her. Victoria found herself standing before Jake's grandmother's grave, looking at the kind face in the photograph. A wave of sorrow washed over her. She remembered visiting with Jake once. While he was out buying lunch, his grandmother had taken her hand. Miss Vance, she had said weakly, thank you so much for everything you've done for us. To be honest, if this boy of mine wasn't so sentimental, I wouldn't want him to be burdened by me any longer. Victoria had tried to comfort her, but the old woman just smiled. You don't have to, dear. I know my own situation. Jake is a lucky boy to have met someone like you. I can't imagine the hardships he would have faced otherwise. She had squeezed Victoria's hand. I know your arrangement isn't serious. It may not last, but I want to ask you for one thing. If that day comes, please, let it be a gentle parting. That boy feels things so deeply. I'm afraid of him getting hurt. At the time, Victoria had agreed, but she hadn't taken it to heart. She had money, and Jake needed money. In her mind, that meant they would be together forever. But Jake hadn't wanted her money. He had wanted her love. She, who despised the sycophants who surrounded her for her wealth, had assumed she could use that same wealth to keep the one person with genuine feelings for her. Jake's departure was the universe's punishment for her arrogance. 5 years passed. Victoria remained alone. No marriage, no boyfriends, no new companions. The missing person notices she posted abroad remained up, a constant and expensive drain on her resources. But they yielded nothing. Until one day, she attended a business conference overseas. And there, across the crowded room, she saw him, Jake Evans. He was confident, successful. Standing beside him was a gentle-looking woman, her belly swollen with pregnancy. And holding his right hand was a small girl, no older than 2, toddling along beside him. She was a perfect doll, with her father's eyes. Victoria stood frozen in place. Back home, she locked the unopened brooch away in a safe, along with the diamond ring she had never accepted. A ring rejected then could never be claimed again. She called her assistants and told them to stop the search for Jake Evans. A contract has an expiration date. So, it turns out, does love. When last we parted, you were yet unwed. Now, children stand beside you in your stead. She finally understood. Between her and Jake, there was no longer any possibility.